Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation, Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. You can find them on Facebook. Also brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Go to the top of the GruelyTruth.net page, click on MyBookie.ag to get up to a $1,000 cashback bonus. 50% of whatever you deposit will be given to you free. So if you deposit $2,000, you get another $1,000. You get $3,000 to play with. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my other co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening. I'm excited to be on, Mike. It's been a long time, man, since you've been on the mic, so let's get it going.
All right, so it's been a long time since Vladimir Klitschko's been in the ring, and we both are trying to figure out if this is an April Fool's joke or not, but it seems like almost everybody is reporting it, and it looks like he is going to sign with DAZN or already has. I don't know if this is true or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little make-believe. If Vladimir Klitschko was to come back and fight, could he make a difference again? Could he be the heavyweight champion of the world again, Jeremiah?
No. I mean, it's as simple as that for me. No, I don't think so. I mean, I do think Vladimir Klitschko can still be a top heavyweight. I mean, look at the landscape. If you don't think so, I would say that you're wrong. I mean, the thing is, when you look at the heavyweight division, you look at you got the 1, 2, and 3 guys. We already know who those guys are, and then after that, you've got Luis Ortiz, who is obviously on the plus side of his prime.
He's older than Klitschko.
Yeah, exactly. He's older than Klitschko, so, Povetkin, is up there in age too. And you got younger guys, but guys who have already shown where their peak is and Dillian White and others. So I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Klitschko can still be a force. For me, it's just a matter of, pitting him against proper opponents. And, he, because of DAZN and their roster so far, I mean, he's got plenty of options. For me, I would like to see him fight Deontay Wilder. To me, that is the best styles matchup that he can get of any of the big dogs. And, of course, signing with DAZN, it doesn't seem like it makes that possible. Maybe they get an Anthony Joshua rematch. I don't know. It's hard to see where they go with that. It just, it's just clear that he's on the same roster as Anthony Joshua, if that's the case. But, again, with the right hand, that's why I think Deontay Wilder is his best bet. How likely that is to come off, I think it's hard to say. But what you have for those two is you would have both guys who are big on the 1-2. And even at this age, Klitschko clearly has the superior 1-2, in my opinion. I think he's still the harder puncher. He's the more technical of the two. Of course, he's a bit older, no doubt about that. So, he could get clipped and Wilder could win that one. But for me, it just seems as if that's the best bet for him. And, if it's true, we'll see how this goes.
Well, Wilder is always the best bet for anybody out of the 3 because he's the worst of the 3, I think. And I think anybody that watched Tyson Fury win 9 out of 12 rounds against him would know that, unless you're just one of them old Deontay Wilder nut huggers that believe that now he's probably a top 10 heavyweight of all time.
Modern day George Foreman, bro.
Yeah, bro. But my guess is if this is really 3 fights for $120 million, you get to see him fight somebody not very good and then somebody else not very good. And then they throw him in with Joshua so they can cash him out.
Yeah, well, looks like Klitschko's getting that Wilder money, isn't it? Wilder rejected the big, large sum, so it looks like Klitschko's going to get that. So good for him. I mean, for me, I'm not that concerned about Vladimir Klitschko coming back, in the same sense that I am with others. We've talked about this plenty of times. You have a lot of heavyweights who hang around. They're clearly past their best and, they're just fighting to collect paydays. Klitschko, to me, again, doesn't scare me that much because I know he's a fitness fanatic. He's just always a guy, and that's part of the reason why he was able to stay on top for so long. always in shape. He's always in the gym. He's always learning. He's always training. And that was one of the big reasons to respect him, not just on my part, but everybody's part. But again, that's why I don't mind it. I still think at this age, with his size, his power, his technique, he can be just fine. But, it wouldn't be so bad if he was playing his cards right. I mean, if he's got 3 fights here, and so if you space that out over the course of about a year and a half, you may have, by that time, a clear heavyweight picture. I mean, you might have the Tyson Fury Wilder rematch by that time. Again, things might start to narrow down a bit. And he fits in just fine.
Damn, Jeremiah, I love how you're so cute sometimes when you get optimistic. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The only way it clears up is if one or two of them gets upset and those guys fight each other.
Yeah. Again, hey man, I'm optimistic because I know the thing about Klitschko to me is I know if he's coming back, I know he's going to get at least one big fight.
Yeah,
that's where
unless he totally shits on himself in the first fight against a guy that's not very good, and that's not going to happen because, as you said,
if David Price knocks him out in his return,
yeah, because David Price volunteered to get knocked out by Vladimir Klitschko, so we'll see how that goes. And we talk about cashing out, so we got Cash Ali. You talked about David Price, so we got David Price. So Cash Ali today was suspended by the British Board of Control for biting heavyweight David Price in the 5th round last Saturday night on the Liam Smith-Sam Eggington card on DAZN. And I guess they've withheld his entire 20,000-pound purse. And he was disqualified after he pulled down the 6'8" Price and bid him. Now, I have a question. Does Cash Ali not watch David Price fight? Why wouldn't you just swing wildly until you hit him and knock him out?
Yeah, exactly. Or just wait until after 4 rounds and then, go to work. I don't know. His excuse was the street mentality kicked in, and
the street mentality.
Yeah, dude.
Where's Cash Ali
what he
from?
Said. Hell, I don't know. Where is he from?
I don't know.
I mean, with a name like Ali, you'd figure he's from the Middle East somewhere. But
Muhammad Ali was Ali, and he was from Louisville.
Yeah, well, you never know. I guess he could be. Yeah. Oh, okay. So he's from the UK.
Oh, okay.
And his name is Kashuf Ali. Okay, so again, I got to be honest, and I don't mean to, I know there are some rougher parts of the UK, but it's just still, I don't know. Whenever you hear a Brit talk about street life, it just, I don't know, it still kind of seems kind of, it just seems kind of goofy as an American because I'm like, are any of these places like Baltimore?
You ever been to Detroit or Flint, Michigan?
Yeah, dude. Well, yeah, especially Detroit. I mean, anybody who needs some perspective on what, shit can really be like.
I don't know. I think you can go to almost any major city in Michigan and find that.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, go to Flint and you can get cancer drinking the water. Detroit, to me, I've been all around the U.S. I've been at almost every state in this country, and Detroit to me was clearly the worst. I mean, it's something like what, 250,000 people, over 250,000 people have left that place in the last decade. I mean, it fucking sucks. I mean, I remember there was an article where they were talking about how it had either the lowest or one of the lowest murder solve rates for the police. And I think it was the place where undercover cops arrested themselves because they did an undercover drug. They did a drug deal with themselves, but it was two different undercover agents. And they were like, hey, you're under arrest. And he was like, no, you're under arrest. Detroit it's really a special place. But yeah, when you hear Cash Ali say, oh, street life kicking in, and I know these guys are probably, shanking each other with the same knives they spread on their, avocado toast in the morning. It just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem as threatening. But I mean, come on, man. You got to be nice. And to his credit, he did apologize. He did get a nice welcome out too after the fight. I don't know if you caught any of the video footage, but everybody was pegging him with their drinks because of it. I mean, he was a dick. He was a dick, and he got what he deserved. But he did apologize, and so I'm not going to give him too hard of a time.
I know, as long as he said he was sorry for biting a guy. What the hell? All right. We've got a possible welterweight unification fight between IBF champion Errol Spence and WBC champion Sean Porter. It looks like it's in the works for September. It would be, of course, a pay-per-view fight. What did Garcia and Spence go on pay-per-view?
I don't know if there was an official number, but I think it was about 380.
380 total?
Yeah, exactly. So it was Garcia's extended family and Spence's mother.
All right, so what makes them think Spence and Porter should be pay-per-view?
I don't know, because to me, Sean Porter is less of a sell than Mikey Garcia is. I mean, come on. I mean, this doesn't really need pointed out, but, they built Spence's brand partly on the back of Mikey Garcia's appeal with Mexican fans. Sean Porter doesn't really have that. But he has been on free TV. He has gotten pretty good exposure when he's been on free TV. I remember when he fought Thurman, the ratings were pretty damn good. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're thinking here, but it's not pay-per-view worthy. I mean, just put this on PBC on Fox. Do the same thing that you did with Thurman, right? Get it to as many people as possible, and I just think that's better. But besides that, again, I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with that or where they're going to go. Maybe they'd, put it in Texas and expect that it'll sell well there now. I don't know. But it's a good fight. And we talked about this. I mean, you, John, and I,
I've got no problem with the fight. I've just got problems with the pay-per-view, and I have to pay for it. And they're going to give us an undercard that's shit on top of that. And I'm just getting tired of this. I mean,
yeah.
I can tell you this. The way this is going now, I'm not touching that. I'm not giving him $79 to watch Errol Spence and Sean Porter fight. Errol Spence is very good. Sean Porter's very tough. That's not a pay-per-view fight. I mean, these guys, Errol Spence may be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't see it. I think he's really good. I think there's a chance he could be special. But you've got to build this thing. You've got to build for a pay-per-view fight. Hell, I watched Duran fight Benitez on free TV. And then Duran and Leonard was closed circuit. That's the way this is supposed to work. So to me, the way this is supposed to work is Errol Spence would then fight, I don't know, maybe Sean Porter. Terrence Crawford would fight somebody. I mean, let him fight Ugas or something. And put them both on free TV on the same card. And then 3 or 4 months later, if those two fights do well, then you have them fight each other, give it a shot at pay-per-view. But right now, the way this is, it's not a pay-per-view fight.
Yeah, you have no objection for me. I mean, it's like, well, in the meantime, they're also talking about doing Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman, and Mike Coppinger also said that was looked at as for a pay-per-view. And again, we all talked about this. You, John, and I, we all thought that this is maybe how it would go, where you'd have Spence-Porter, and then you'd have Thurman-Pacquiao. And to me, the Thurman-Pacquiao fight makes more sense as a pay-per-view than Porter-Spence. I mean,
yeah, because Manny Pacquiao's on the damn thing.
Exactly. I mean, come on, Pacquiao's got an entire nation behind him. Again, I'm not going to pay that money for it.
And he's popular in this country too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a special guy. He's earned the right to pick and choose who he wants to fight. And to me, that makes more sense. But it would be nice if you had, I mean, I could deal with this even though I'm still not paying for it, but I could deal with doing, Errol Spence and Sean Porter and, Keith Thurman and then Manny Pacquiao like on, successive weekends. And then you have the
How
winner.
about this? Let's put them both on the same card and have a pay-per-view.
There you go. I mean, there you go. I mean,
now, I would probably pay for that because those are 4 high-quality fighters. They're 2 really good fights. But I just don't see, for one fight, and my fear is I'm just going to watch Errol Spence just box Sean Porter's ears off and stop him late or win a boring unanimous decision. I've already seen that when he fought Mikey Garcia. Now, I think Porter probably has a lot better shot than Garcia did. Porter always comes to fight, but it's just this pay-per-view shit's getting old. I mean, especially
Got sold.
Terrence Crawford and Amir Khan are a pay-per-view fight. Now, I can tell you this: I would love to see that fight because Amir Khan's going to come to fight, and he's going to look good, and he's going to give him trouble for 4 or 5 rounds, and then he's going to get splattered all over the ring. But at least it'll be a good competitive fight. But a good competitive fight is not what a pay-per-view event is. A pay-per-view event to me is a fight where you're not really sure who's going to win.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna do this pay-per-view stuff, at least I would say follow the model of something like the WWE, and it's like, because most of their stuff is free, but then they build the biggest of the big into a pay-per-view event, and people are just fine with that. It doesn't bother them because they know they're going to get, more in-depth storylines and yada yada. Again, I'm not a wrestling fan anymore, but you just got to acknowledge that McMahon has built an excellent brand, and he's garnered a lot of appeal. For me, you'd copy something like that, and I think that would be just fine if you had Porter and Spence and Pacquiao and Thurman on the same card. I mean, almost nobody would complain about that then. So.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen, though.
All right, next up, Eddie Hearn is planning on matching light heavy, whatever he is. I don't even know who the champion of anything is anymore. But planning on matching light heavyweight knockout artist Callum Johnson and Joe Smith in their next fights. He wants to have the winner of Callum versus Smith fight to face the winner of Dimitri Bivol and Marcus Brown. So I think Callum Johnson against Joe Smith would be an excellent fight. I just wanted to say that. But whoever wins is going to get their ass kicked by Dimitri Bivol or Marcus Brown.
So we would have to potentially watch Joe Smith Jr. against Bivol again? That shit doesn't make any sense to me. But like you said, that's a good fight. I really like that one.
I'm saying since that's the fight and the winner fights the winner of Bivol Brown, I'm saying there's probably a pretty good chance if Callum Johnson could just get through the 12 rounds, he'll win the fight.
Yeah. Well, watching Callum Johnson, I think that's a big if. I think that's a big no, actually. I don't see it. I think Smith is the better fighter. I think he's a bit longer, and I think he hits harder, and but it's like you said, stylistically, it's very appealing. I mean, and that's one of those fights. If you're going to build for somebody, put it on the undercard of let's go back to kind of what you were getting at in the last discussion. Let's put that fight on the undercard of Bivol Brown.
Either that, or how about this? Let's put both of those fights on the undercard of Porter and Spence, and then we'll have something. But we can't because it's different promotional entities. So.
Yeah, that pesky thing we hear about so often in boxing.
Yeah, at least back in the 70s and 80s, there was really only 2 main promoters, so it was a lot easier to put on cards like that.
Yep. Well, things are getting better. I mean, we have more titles now. We've got more promotional entities. I mean, we've got more. Again, all this, fractionalization. Actually, I pointed this out in my funny article today. The Casual Mondays. Go and check that out.
Did you put that up
bit
yet?
Of an April
I didn't even know you did.
Oh yeah, no, it's been up for hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it up.
I haven't
think
been
about
on the website
4 your time.
Hours, so.
Oh, well, you got to get on it, man. But yeah, no, I put it up. I just did a little April's Fool edition instead of the typical idiots that I make fun of. I take people who actually have legitimate opinions, and then I bullshit with them. But yeah, no, I talked about that in my article today, where somebody's complaining about all the titles, and so apparently they're making Robert Easter Jr. versus Rances Bartholomew for the WBA lightweight championship. So anybody if you follow boxing, you already know that Lomachenko has that belt. So all they're doing is giving, one of these guys the quote unquote regular title. And again, but like I said in the article, these things are good for boxing. The more titles, the better. Let's just keep going this way.
All right. So also, Errol Spence, did you see who the mandatory for his title is now?
Say that again.
Did you see who Errol Spence's mandatory is now?
I don't know. You picking this up in the rankings
No,
I don't
there's
know.
an article here that Kudratillo Abdukarava, whatever the hell it is, I don't know, earned the mandatory spot to fight Errol Spence because he defeated number 6 ranked IBF Keita Obara, who was 20-4 with one draw by a 12-round unanimous decision last Saturday night. So that means that Errol Spence has got trouble coming.
Oh, big time. No, I've seen the guy that we're talking about, and also I have a question. I have a question from a listener, so we'll go to that after I'm done answering the question. But I have seen that guy fight, and he is pretty solid. He's got a good amateur background.
But he has done nothing to beat a number 1 contender.
Oh, of course. Well, if you're beating Obara for a number 1 position, you know it's bullshit. And again, I like Obara. I think Obara is a good fighter. Certainly nowhere near the top brass at 147 pounds, but he's a good fighter. I'm trying to remember who exactly that he upset, and he kind of got jobbed in the decision. Damn it, I can't remember right now. But Obara, he's already been beat a number of times already. I mean, Edward Troyanovsky.
4 losses.
Yeah, Edward Troyanovsky, the guy at 140, knocked him out in like 3 rounds or something. I mean, come on, the dude, it's not worth it. Anyways, this is just again, this guy is not a bad fighter. The guy who beat Obara is not a bad fighter at all. But he's not a big puncher. Again, good amateur background, yada yada. He's not beating him. Anyway, so here's the question from the fan, and this is from Hamed Zaman. So a guy that I've been talking to a little while, and we'll get him on the show one of these days. And sorry I didn't answer your message earlier. I took a little snoozer before I came on the show, and wasn't really looking on Facebook or any of my social media portals beforehand. But again, we'll get you on. So here's his question, and I thank him for chiming in. So he's asking if we think that Joshua and Wilder will happen before 2020. So go ahead and take that away, Mike, and then I will go ahead and chime in.
No. I think this. I don't think either fighter is afraid of the other one, but I think both promotional companies are afraid of risking losing that O on the end of the record. And it still comes down to what we said before. Back in the day, a loss was not that big a deal, especially if you lost to a high-quality fighter. But now, in the day and age we live in, that one on the loss record's a killer. And I think also this, when you look at it, Joshua doesn't have to be in any hurry anyways. I think Wilder's the one that needs to be in a hurry, and the problem with Wilder is he's been offered anywhere that we know of from $12 to $40 million to do this fight. If he wanted to do this fight, it would have already been done, I think. And if he's worried about 50-50, when you look at the resumes of the two fighters,
yeah, you can kiss that goodbye.
Joshua's better. His resume is better. He's beaten Dillian White. He's already beat Brazil, who he knocked out. He beat Klitschko. He's fought a lot better competition. He's accomplished a lot more. He's probably as well known in this country as Wilder is, because nobody knows who Wilder. Wilder didn't even sell out his last title defense in his own hometown. So I think what you'll get is you'll get a bunch of dicking around like we always do. And there's no way I think this happens before 2020. I just hope it happens in 2020, which I'm not convinced that it's going to happen then either.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I don't think it's going to happen in 2020. I mean, it is kind of hard to predict these things because, a lot of people didn't think that DAZN was going to give Wilder an offer and try to bait him in. And, now that he's back with Showtime, to me, being back with Showtime indicates that a Tyson Fury rematch is more likely. That's what I think. And if Vladimir Klitschko is truly coming back, that speaks to me that, he's probably on the table for Anthony Joshua. So, like you said, Anthony Joshua's already accomplished quite a bit, and give the guy credit where credit is due. I mean, Mike and I are not huge fans of the heavyweight division right now, But what he's been able to do in a little over 20 fights is pretty impressive. I mean, he's been moved quickly and he's done well for himself. I just don't see it either. Again, anything is possible, so it wouldn't shock me. But again, him being on Showtime, him going back to Showtime in some expression of loyalty speaks to me and says that the Fury rematch is probably going to happen. So you will have them take tune-up fights this year, first, right? Wilder's going to get Brazil, Fury's going to get Schwarz, and then they'll probably have rematch with one another, and then they'll probably look to Joshua's way. And at the very least, I think you're looking at 2020.
Yeah. At the very least. Maybe never, never.
Well, actually, it might not happen. You might be right, because Tyson Fury may end up beating Deontay Wilder much clearer than the first time. I mean, he might 12-0 him, and then the luster's just off that. Like all the British people listening out there, like Mike said, Deontay Wilder is really not that big stateside. He's not that big of an entity.
No, the big thing about him is just people that want to go on YouTube and watch these dumbass bloggers. And usually, I'm not going to say that, but we know what we're talking about here, is that these are basically people that have no common sense, which is what predominantly Deontay Wilder fans are. Not everybody. There's some people like John that just wish that there was another great heavyweight so bad that they wish that. And I don't think Tyson Fury is a great heavyweight. I think Fury could fight Wilder again and get knocked out in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if Fury dominated him 1-on-12 rounds. I think the best hope to have a great heavyweight right now is Anthony Joshua, because he has, I think, all the tools you want. He just lacks the personality. Deontay Wilder lacks the tools and the personality, because basically he makes himself look like an idiot every time he opens his mouth. Because really, if you were to come out and tell me that Deontay Wilder and Clarissa Shields were the same person, it would not surprise me.
Yep. Almost like they're brother and sister, really.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, that's the way they act, too. They have no common sense, and they're basically idiots. There's no reason. Who wants to cheer for that? I mean, seriously, who wants to cheer for somebody that's going to act like a damn idiot? But there are people out there that do, though. And you know why they like to cheer for an idiot?
I don't know, because they're idiots?
Because they're idiots. It's pretty simple. So I see it all the time. I mean, I see an idiot that posts on there, would Jerry Cooney beat Deontay Wilder? Well, yeah. Is there water in a river? I mean, Jerry Cooney won 5 New York State Golden Gloves. I mean, he fought a great fight, life and death, with a prime Larry Holmes, probably Holmes at his absolute best, in one of the biggest fights in history, and got stopped in the 13th round. I think this. If there's anybody out there that thinks Deontay Wilder could have made it into the 13th round with Larry Holmes, they're nuts. And the other thing is this. I'd still like to see the Harold Sconyers tape, because I'm pretty sure that if Deontay Wilder fights Jerry Cooney, he catches one hook to the body or the head from Jerry Cooney, it's night-night time. Because Jerry Cooney, I'll say this right now, I think would beat any heavyweight in the heavyweight division right now.
We've been over this sort of stuff before. I mean, again, Wilder to me is, I think Wilder, and again, I don't hate Wilder. I just don't think I think there's this false sense of hope around him because he is American and he does punch hard. So a lot of, and again, I'm American. But I really don't have some innate bias, especially when it comes to heavyweights. When it comes to Americans, it's, to me, I prefer Joshua. I prefer Povetkin. I prefer Tyson Fury. I mean, there are a lot of guys I prefer over Deontay Wilder. I just think, and I've said this before on other shows, I think he's a bad loss away from just kind of being relegated as this sort of second-class type guy. I mean, I see a lot of discussions in forums about him, because, like how well would he fare against this guy and that guy? But I can tell you that as a boxing fan for years, perceptions change. They're very fluid in the boxing community. And one time you could look like a killer and people are pumping you up and bragging about you, and then you're a knockout loss away from like, no, come on. I mean, he would have beaten Michael Grant and plenty of other guys
And
throughout
Michael
history.
Grant was a guy, the first time he got knocked out, he just disappeared. Because there's a lot of
Yeah,
guys like that, especially at the heavyweight division. Because when you get the aura of invincibility shattered, then half the guys that might have been scared to death of you before are no longer scared of you. I mean, we saw the same thing with Mike Tyson. I mean, there's still some guys in the mid-late 90s scared of him. But overall, hell, I remember Francois Botha outboxing him for 4 or 5 rounds till he got caught because the fear was gone. And once the
yeah,
fear of that punch is gone, Deontay Wilder doesn't have anything but that punch. And, you know, the thing is this, everybody always says, well, he just needs to be right on one time to knock somebody out and it's over. He was with Fury, and Fury got up. And the other thing is, if you're listening to this, people, when you knock a man down, he doesn't have 10 seconds to get up. He has till the count of 10 to get up. And if he gets up before the count of 10, you didn't knock him out.
Yep, pretty simple, right? Same with the Mike Tyson Buster Douglas situation.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you're right. I think Wilder is just, I think he's a clear loss away from just kind of being, again, I think my view is that the cracks in the foundation are already there. I mean, not only did he have a tough fight with Sconiers, and he's developed since then, obviously. But when you watch Tyson Fury outbox him clearly in most people's eyes, to me that just tells you it's there, right?
Yeah, because I don't think Tyson
there.
Fury is that good. And if Tyson Fury can outbox you that easily, there's issues. And when you're flailing away and swinging, he only landed 70 punches in that fight. Fury landed like 85 or 90. It was not a great fight. It was boring as hell. There was just a couple knockdowns that made it more exciting. And we're so used to seeing bad heavyweights and bad fights. We'll take anything we can get. And the same thing goes for Joshua Klitschko. Anybody that's listened to our shows in the past, it was not a great fight. It was a dramatic fight. You know, the first 4 rounds, because I remember when we had this argument, and we were doing the fight of the year thing a year and a half ago or something, and I told John Rispani, I said, John, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch this fight and see what happens. And when they do the walk-in and everything, even the second time I watched that, I was getting goosebumps because it was great. And then the first round starts, and by the time I'm to the third round, I'm dozing off because nothing was happening. And then something happened for the last half of the fight, but to me, that's not a great fight. I grew up, I saw Ali fight Frazier, Ali fight Foreman, Holmes and Cooney. Those were great fights. And at the end of the day, every one of those fighters landed in triple digits, and they threw more than 200 or 300 punches each. So this is a heavyweight division that is exciting because it is mediocre. It's not parity, because parity, to me, is actually a bunch of people that are pretty good, but just not great. This is mediocrity. These guys aren't even pretty good. They're all right. Maybe Joshua can turn into something. Maybe the one of the young guys can turn into something. But when I look at this, and John's made the comment before that he thought this could turn out to be as good as the 90s heavyweight division, I think that's nuts. I mean, you had guys like Ray Mercer, who I think would have just walked through these dudes, because I think the biggest mismatch in history would have probably been Ray Mercer against Deontay Wilder, because I think you could stand there with a baseball bat, hit Ray Mercer in his prime, and he ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, no, Mercer was incredibly tough. I mean, he
the
took tons
three-punch
of.
combination that Tommy Morrison hit him with would have knocked any other man on his ass. And Ray Mercer just walked right through it.
Yeah, what was it? I think it was a hook, an uppercut followed by a left hook, but I can't remember what was before that. Am I right?
I thought it was a left hook to the body, an uppercut, and then a hook to the head. But I'm not sure. It was something like that.
Yeah.
It was a three-punch combination that would have knocked a horse out.
But it
didn't knock out Ray Mercer, because you remember Ray, he had that like tree trunk neck thing and it was one of them short necks too. It's hard to knock them short neck dudes out. All right.
Good shock absorption.
Yeah. So what do we have for on this day, or did you have something else you wanted to bring up before it?
No, there were plenty of fights on this day. So yeah, let's go with one of them. I mean, it was kind of hard to narrow it down today, but I went with terrible Terry Norris versus John the Beast Mugabi, and this was 154 pounds. Not a long fight at all. Didn't even go a single round, but it was one of those things that Mugabi got caught and didn't recover, and then ended up getting stopped. I mean, I watched this fight before I even came on. Um, and I was just trying to just pinpoint some of the nuances of the fight that maybe I missed in the past or I couldn't quite remember.
It wasn't long enough to have any
it all
nuances.
started. Well, one thing that I found interesting was actually the punch that started it all. Started Mugabe's downfall, was that Mugabi had thrown a couple jabs, and Terry Norris did a couple really nice parries. I don't know what it was about the parrying of those punches, but they were very fluid, and he was just kind of showy in the way that he did it. But then Mugabi threw a punch to the body, and Terry Norris seemed ready for it. Almost like he was anticipating that, and so he had his left elbow tucked. He caught the punch and immediately came back with a left hook that caught Mugabi right on the chin and wobbled him badly. And again, that started it all. And once he got, I mean, he was in real bad shape when he got up. Terry Norris kept trying to finish him. Mugabi was a little savvy. He was able to tie him up at times. He fought back at times, and so he hung on. And if you watch it and you've never seen it before, you kind of get the feeling that maybe he can survive the first round. And, then he catches that right hand near the end of the round and gets his lights put out. I mean, the switch was flipped, and that was all she wrote. But it was a damn good performance by Norris. And I still think, Mugabi obviously wasn't at his best at that time.
I think Mugabi was ruined by Hagler, and the biggest point to that is this. What I remember about, because I really like Mugabi. I liked him before that. I think the first time I ever saw him is maybe knock out James Hard Rock Green on NBC Sports World and Frank the Animal Fletcher. And he was an impressive dude. I think he was like 24-0 with 24 knockouts when he fought Hagler. But the Hagler fight took a lot out of him. And what I remember was he fought, I don't know if it was a year later, or I think it might have been the same year he fought Hagler. He fought Dwayne Thomas. And Dwayne Thomas was a good fighter, but you never would have thought he was going to knock out Mugabi, and he knocked out Mugabi. Mugabi, the next 4 years, fought basically nobody. I mean, I don't even think he fought again until 1988. And most of the guys he were beating were guys you've never heard of. I mean, before he took the Norris fight, his fight before he fought Norris was against a guy by the name of Ralph Smiley, who was 12-17. And I think he fought him in France. And it wasn't a fight before that, though, was it?
Well, hold on, which one?
Because I know he fought a bunch of guys that weren't very good over the next 4 years. He took a year and a half off. I think he fought for the title and won a title against Rene Jacquot, which was actually, I think, shown on ESPN because I remember watching. But Jacquot was like 24-9. I don't know how that became for the WBC World Superweight title. He fought Ricky Stackhouse, who, if I remember, was a good amateur. But really, between being knocked out by Dwayne Thomas and fighting Terry Norris, he didn't really fight much competition. And then Norris knocks him out quick. McClellan knocked him out quick. And that was about it for him. I mean, if you look at his career, there's not too many impressive wins on it. So my question was always this. When you looked at like the fights against Parker, Green, and Fletcher, those guys were really all three kind of undersized middleweights. And he knocked them out pretty easy. I know he stopped Gary Guyton, who was from Indiana. And then he loses to Hagler. My big question was, did he go so long as Hagler? Because I think Hagler was damn near completely shot when he fought Leonard. The reflexes. I think Hagler's reflexes were probably gone after the Juan Roldan fight in, I think, October of '84. Or after Hearns. Hearns was in '85. I think that fight took a lot out of him. So I think you had a Hagler that didn't move as much, and that's why he looked better in that fight. but I think Hagler took it out of him, and I think Mugabe in the long run, when you go back and look at the fights against Fletcher and them, he was a limited dude that just had to knock you out to beat you.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing about Mugabe,
He was stiff, if I remember right.
yeah. This is what I would say about the tape I've seen of Mugabe, and I did see the fight against the Frenchman Jacques, and I think Jacques checked out with an injury, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it counted as a TKO, but I think he had an injury. I don't think it was like
It
anything
wasn't
like
a clear
Terry
win,
Norris
and
stopping him.
Jacques was a guy that lost like 9 or 10 fights. I mean, it's listed as a TKO in the first round at 253.
Yeah, yeah, but I think he checked out with an injury. But when I saw Mugabe, and I thought that yes, he was a bit stiff. But the reason I thought he was an offensive force was because he had good hand speed and good power. And watching the Hagler fight, I mean, his chin looked pretty good. I mean, those attributes in
Yeah, that's why I think
themselves.
Hagler basically was the end of him, because I think Hagler took his chin. Because
Yeah,
after that, he wasn't near his scale. And really, Mugabe was a guy who, like you talked about Wilder, I think you might be able to say the same thing there. I think he was a lot better technically than Wilder, but he was one of those guys that hit so hard, everybody was afraid of him. But once you see him lose, all of a sudden you're not as afraid. And once you see Dwayne Thomas knock him out, you're definitely not going to be as afraid as what you were.
yeah. And so to me, it's it's always hard to read into these sort of things because when I look at those attributes, I'm like, well, okay, well, who, if you're, because to me, there are all-time greats, of course, and then there are good fighters, but because the trajectory of so many of these guys, you ask yourself, like, well, how would he have paired up with some of the best guys to ever do it at middleweight at his best? Like I think there are a lot of good fighters, guys we would classify as good, who could potentially beat all-time great fighters just because of their
Yeah, just
styles or
styles. Yeah.
the yeah, or the way they looked at certain points. I mean, like to me, Michael Nunn was not an all-time great middleweight, but just because of his size and what I mean, you put him against a guy like Bernard Hopkins. I think that's a really tough outing for a guy like Hopkins. So a lot of this is pretty complex. I mean, I think I did see I do think there are some guys who. I think the rose-tinted glasses are on a little too much. I did see a guy like Rick Glazer and a number of the people in the comment section say that a guy like Mugabe would have basically whooped everybody out in middleweight today. And I think he was pretty damn good, but I'm not going to go that far with him. But I mean, like you said, I mean, after he got knocked out a couple times, it just wasn't there. And then I know he eventually lost to who was it? William Bo James, who isn't a name that a lot of people are going to recognize, but he did become a Bernard Hopkins victim. I think he actually squeaked into the top 10 when Bernard Hopkins beat him. So he wasn't, anything special either, but he was one of those guys who was kind of a transitional period where Bo James beat an old Mugabe and then eventually went on top 10. Lost to Hopkins.
Yeah, I think Glenn Kelly ended his career too, didn't he?
Are you talking about Mugabe's?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, he ended up, Glenn Kelly, he was the Australian guy, right?
Yeah. He was light heavyweight
Yeah.
Australian.
Right. Yeah, he ended up, I think, stopping him. I can't remember, but he did stop him. I think the middle rounds or something. But yeah, that was that. But yeah, Mugabe to me, I mean, if you you do these hypothetical matchups and you think about head to head, I think there are probably some pretty damn good fighters that Mugabe could beat. But because the Hagler fight, he just didn't maximize his potential.
So what's your take on Terry Norris? Because with Terry Norris, you got a guy who's interesting because he did get
Really
beat
talented.
by Julian Jackson, beat Jorge Vaca in a close fight. Vaca was a decent fighter for a long time. Knocked out Mugabe, beat Jacques. But the fight that made everybody think he was the next Sugar Ray Leonard, and I remember this was on pay-per-view, where he dominated Sugar Ray Leonard, and that was a Leonard who what was that? It was about a year and a half after he'd beaten Duran the third fight. Then he beats an old Donald Curry. And I remember about that time, there was people that thought he was the best fighter pound for pound in the world.
Yeah, and when you talk about that time, after he lost to Jackson and then beat Mugabe, he had a pretty solid run there. I mean, he beat, Curry, he beat Castro, who was pretty good. I think Castro is the guy who I think technically beat Reggie Johnson twice, or maybe had a draw in a win over him.
Yeah, but he's also the guy that got Roberto Duran's head handed to him by William Joppi when Duran upset him in Argentina a few years later.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, yeah,
but he was a good fighter.
Yeah, so. He definitely was. You got to give him a good. And he beat Maurice Blocker, who was a pretty damn good fighter himself. But yeah, I mean, for me, Terry Norris was a very talented guy. I mean, he had quick hands, good power, good combination guy, fluid foot movement. To me, he's one of those guys who to me he's kind of like a. Well, I'm trying to think of who I would compare him to, but he was a very talented guy too. And I think if you get him against like a non-puncher, like a great non-puncher, I think he does pretty well. Again, he had a ton of talent. It's just the chin that really kind of did him in.
Split fights with Simon Brown, which Simon Brown was a damn good fighter. He had to mess with Luis Santana, which I think they fought like 3 times in a year or something, where the first 2 were DQs, and he stopped him in the third. He beat Paul Vaden, who was a really good fighter out of California. Vincent Petway he beat. When you look at his career, Nick Rupa was a guy that was fringe top 10. He actually held the title up until then. I think Rupa was one of his last defenses. And he lost to Keith Mullings, lost a decision to Rosenblatt, got TKO'd by Laurent Boudouana, who got like a title shot every year because he was one of Don King's boys. But when you look at Norris's career, and I hadn't really thought about it that much till you brought up, that this was the on this day. He's got a lot of quality wins. I mean, Blocker, Brown, those are all good wins. Meldrick Taylor. At the time, I don't think people really realized that Taylor was so washed up because, I mean, that was only, 2 years after the Chavez fight.
Yeah, no, but like you said, I mean, Terry Norris's career was rock solid. I mean, the thing that's always going to be held against him is just his inconsistency. I mean, his run there for a little bit, as we were talking about, rock solid. It was pretty damn good. He beat some good fighters. I mean, it's worth going back and watch the films to gain perspective. But a guy like Simon Brown, damn good fighter. Yeah. I like Simon, but it was just his chin. Eventually, he's going to be knocked off at some point. And I actually think, come to think about it, Cliff Rold, who's like the dude's a boxing encyclopedia, and he's on Transnational, and he used to be on the Ring, and he writes for Boxing Scene. I actually think he did a statistical analysis of the best 154 pounders ever, and I think he had Terry Norris number 1. I know he's okay. Let me see if I can look this up. Okay. All right. So he was a lineal champion. So Terry Norris was the lineal champion from 95 to 97, had 4 defenses, had the WBC title. Wow. He made 10 defenses from 1990 to 1993. Shit, more boxers should do that. So yeah, I guess he faced, I mean, this kind of goes to our point. It says he faced 13 titleists / champions. So, and Rold is a good dude, so I know he distinguishes between titles and champions. Fought 13 of them: Drayton, Jackson, Mugabi, Jacqua, Leonard, Curry, Carl Daniels. Okay, I forgot about that one. Brown, Santana, Paul Vaden, Petaway, Mullings, and Boudouani. I didn't know about that one. But that's pretty interesting. Of course, I'd favor somebody like Mike McCallum and Tommy Hearns over him. So, if we're using a little more nuance, I don't think anybody's going to rate Terry Norris number 1.
Nino Benvenuti was a champion too in that division. I think he was one of the first champions in that division in the mid-late 60s too. He was pretty damn good.
Yeah. So, okay. So I got a question for you. Just kind of looking at some of these rankings, how would you Who would you favor, Terry Norris versus Winky Wright?
At what weight?
154?
I'd go with Winky, I think. But I have to think about it. So the fact that I have to think about it tells me that, you know, Terry Norris is pretty damn good. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
looking right
yeah, yeah.
now. There's a top 10 on here for super welterweights, and I've seen two of them, and both of them have Winky Wright and Terry Norris damn near right next to each other. One's got Winky Wright 4 all time, more Norris 5. The other one's got Wright 4, Norris 6. I think I would go with Winky. It may just be because to me, I mean, Winky was a damn good fighter. He fought some great competition also. I think I would side with Winky, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably like 60-40.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a tough one. I saw that name and I was like, that would be a real tough one. Okay, one more, and just because I find this interesting. What about somebody like Tito Trinidad? You think Norris would have a shot there? I mean, I know
No.
Trinidad was
Trinidad was
tall.
chinny. I
Okay.
mean, and Trinidad was tall, and Julian Jackson built similar, wasn't he? I think that Terry Norris, as you said, is a guy that against a Winky Wright, who's not a big puncher. Winky Wright is no doubt a lot better than Felix Trinidad, but I think style wise, matchup wise, I don't. I think Norris would have a better chance against Wright than he would Trinidad because I think eventually Trinidad hits him on the chin.
Yep. Okay, well, we agree then. That's my thinking. And it's funny, and I think it's to the point where I didn't think about making that point when I said that, but it is one of those interesting things that a lot of people need to think about. Trinidad was not on Winky Wright's level. We know that. I mean, even if they would have fought out, no matter
Well,
what
dude,
weight.
if you want to use it in a sports parlance, use a different sport. How about this? Super Bowl 42, was it? The undefeated New England Patriots were a much better team than the New York Giants. I mean, shit, they were undefeated. But the weakness the Giants had, or the weakness that the Patriots had, was their offensive line was just average. And the New York Giants that year had one of the great defensive lines of all time. It evens the playing field because when your
Yep.
strength is their weakness, even if they're better than you attack that weakness and you beat it. Max Schmeling, the first time he fought Joe Louis, found that weakness, took advantage of that weakness, and beat him. Nobody's ever going to say that Max Schmeling was as good as Joe Louis, but Max Schmeling, before he got old, because I think it was an old Schmeling when they fought a couple years later, because Schmeling wasn't extraordinarily active against top competition the 2 years in between there. But if you know what I mean, it was just if you can find the weakness, you can beat that person. I mean, that's why you get huge upsets that nobody sees coming.
Yeah, well, and I think in a sport like boxing, those things play out in real time much quicker than other sports because it's really, they talk about football being a game of inches,
Well,
and boxing really is
you've
not
got
a
a
sport.
couple hours to figure it out in a football game. So they
Yeah,
may be able to attack your weakness. And how many times have we seen a team's a huge underdog? They'll jump up 14-0, but when the game's over, it's 41-17. But a team you thought would win because they figure out how to combat that. It's just sometimes your weakness is your weakness, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. And you're taking on somebody who has that exact opposite strength, and you're screwed. I mean, Vernon Forrest and Ricardo Mayorga. Does anybody really think Ricardo Mayorga is in the same boat as Vernon Forrest?
nope.
But it was a styles thing. Mayorga's style gave him trouble, and that's why he won the fight. I mean, Vernon Forrest was a damn good welterweight. And I'll tell you this, I still think to this day, Vernon Forrest at his best would have whooped Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to go as far as saying whooping, but I do think
Whooping
that
means
for
he would have won.
yeah, yeah,
In my
I
parlance,
do think he would have won.
if I beat you by a point, I kicked your ass. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah. It
I
doesn't matter
just
if
think
it's
the length of Forrest and his ability to box with Floyd being a counterpuncher, I think would have been a bad thing. But when you get a Mayorga who's going balls to the wall and just going after Forrest, Forrest was a big puncher, but I don't think he was a real strong welterweight, if that makes any sense.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Forrest would have won that fight just because he was so good. I mean, I really liked Forrest. I mean, if anybody who watched what he did against Moses, and this is the funny thing is, people I've noticed have a lesser opinion of Vernon Forrest because he lost to Ricardo Mayorga, and that's fine. I understand how those sorts of things can alter opinions, but you look at a guy like Marcos Maidana, who was able to give Floyd a tough outing too, and so these things again, a lot of it's just about styles.
Jose Luis
You
Castillo.
put a tough.
I mean, come on. Castillo's
Yeah.
nowhere near on the level of Mayweather, but he won that first fight. And that second fight, yeah, Floyd won it clearly, but he didn't blow him out. I mean, it was like an 8-4 fight.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So again, it's all about styles there. I mean, Mosley was able to jump to the number one pound for pound position because of his performance against Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, they leapfrogged him over Roy Jones Jr. So again,
Yeah, and they should have, because Roy Jones Jr. wasn't fighting near that competition.
Nah, Roy didn't. Nah, he didn't. He didn't take on a guy like Oscar De La Hoya at the time. I mean, that was
it's not really Roy's fault because there wasn't nobody like Oscar De La Hoya at that division. But Darius Michalczewski was closer than people think.
Yeah, and something like that should have happened. And again, there are a few things that Roy should have done in his career that were he should have taken some different paths. But I still look back on the Mosley, and I know we're getting further off topic here. I don't even know where the hell this came from, but to me,
what On This Day is all about. If you ever
exactly.
listen to the Sheridan Report, I mean, we'll be talking about one sport and end up on something completely different.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on Wikipedia and I'm clicking the links. You know what I mean? I'm like, hold on, what's the Battle of Groenwald? Hold on, hold on. Was that? I think I just made a real reference to the Teutonic Knights fighting the Rus. Anyways,
the Rus is on fire. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. No, the Mosley De La Hoya fight to me is still. I'm trying to think. I still think it's the best welterweight fight we've had in a real. I don't think there's been anything like it since. Maybe
Not
I'm mistaken.
Before, I would say Duran and Leonard, the first fight.
Of course.
I think this, though. I think it was better than Leonard Hearns one. Because if you've ever seen Leonard Hearns one, the first 4 rounds look like Joshua and Klitschko or Wilder and Fury because not really a whole lot happened.
Yeah, and and you had sustained action in the.
And it's not just it was sustained action. It was sustained action by 2 damn good fighters.
Yes, really good. I mean, those guys were at their absolute peaks at that point, and it was really. It's just the reason I like that fight so much is A, because I was a Mosley fan at the time, but B, because you just haven't seen anything like it. I mean. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, chime in on Twitter or in the comment section or whatever. Do we have anything in the comment section, by the way? Are you on screen?
Hey, there we go. Hold on. Well, I never look at that. And then after the show, I find it and I think, damn, there was like 3 questions.
Yeah, you know what happened? I messed up last week. I wasn't on Spreaker and I noticed that a guy sent me a question. And I was like, I almost never run the thing by myself, so I never check. And there was a question on there. I was like, shit, man. So, I don't want to ignore that sort of stuff.
It's really easy to miss that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I see nothing.
Okay, cool. So then I can just rant about Mosley De La Hoya just a little bit longer. But no, I just, when you look at that fight and how long ago it was, what was that, in 2001? 2000?
The first fight was in 2000. The second fight, I think, was 2001. I remember this because actually my son was born like exactly 12 days before that fight. And they'd rushed him to the hospital, and he spent 12 days in Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. And the first day he came back was that afternoon. And I remember sitting there with my son, who was a little baby, couldn't do shit at the time. And he sat on my lap, or sat in my chair with me, and I watched the fight. It was on pay-per-view. I was broke as shit, but I still paid for it because I figured by then, hey, 12 days in ICU, I just dropped $60K anyways. I'm never going to pay back. I might as well run up my cable bill too.
Exactly. Now you're thinking, Mike, the American way, baby.
Yeah, if you can't pay it, fuck it. Run it up until they don't let you do it no more. and then let them figure it out.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Don't be calling my number. No,
Yeah.
but no, it was just. I think the reason I like that fight so much, again, this is to my B example, was because it's an example of the sort of things that should happen in boxing. That's what, to me, just in my short lifespan, it's one of those more glorious moments where it's like if you put fights like that on, you get good results. I mean, everybody was raving about that fight afterwards. Mosley was on top of the world. People were ranting about the skill level, and it was pasted all over magazines. And if you would have had Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, back in 2008-ish, 9-ish, you
That's
could
what
have
you would have had.
you would have had something more like that. But instead,
Yeah.
we got to settle for these bullshit pay-per-views, and they're just conning you guys. It's just con job after con job.
All right, we do have a message now from a Flomo. Um, let's see. What's his name? Paul something or other. I don't know. It starts with a B. But Paul says that it doesn't matter when Mayweather fights Pacquiao, Mayweather dominates Pacquiao.
Yeah, well, I mean, and here's the thing: is I don't mind saying at all that Mayweather would have won. I picked
I
Mayweather.
do. I think
I was
Pacquiao would have won in 2008 or 2009. I think he was better then. I think people forget how quick Manny's feet and his hands were, and the way he gave angles. I think this. I really don't know who would have won the fight, to tell you the truth, because I don't know how great Floyd Mayweather is. And the reason I say that is this. I think it's hard to judge greatness if you're never really in trouble, and if you never really take a chance by fighting somebody that people think you shouldn't. It's like the Mikey Garcia thing. Mikey Garcia was a fat welterweight. It was a bad idea, but he wasn't afraid to give it a shot. And I would have liked to have seen at some point Floyd Mayweather just jump up and fight Golovkin. And the thing is, to me, even if he'd have got knocked out by Golovkin, I would have thought more of him. Jose Napoli's, when you look at his level of competition, it was not great because his division, welterweight, wasn't that great at the time. And even though his division wasn't great, he jumped up and fought probably a guy that is in everybody's at least top 5 middleweight champions of all time, in Carlos Monzon. And I think more of him because I could sit there and watch him take that chance. And you just don't see people take those chances anymore.
No, and the chances are a bit exaggerated too. Again, I think Floyd is a highly talented guy, and again, I don't
he's
have
a great fighter. It's just he's not a he's an all-time great fighter, but he's not one of the greatest fighters that ever lived.
No, well, and here's my thing: is it is worth acknowledging that Floyd was the man at 135 pounds. He was the man at 147 pounds. So it's not as if he's devoid of achievements. My problem is that the achievements that people have. The people that achievements prop up anymore they're not on the same level as they used to be. Yeah, okay, so there's 130, 135, 140, 147, 154. So, just encompassing those. And we talked about this when we had a guy on, and if you haven't heard it, we had a guy on, debating the merits of Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah, and I would like to bring
Floyd
up the
Mayweather
fact
Jr.
that this dude that wanted to fight like us still talks like us on the internet all the time. But if you listen to the show we did with William, on almost every point we make, he says you're right.
Yeah, he concedes. Well, and this is why, and this is the point I make. And again, I'm not a Mayweather hater or any of that. I mean, I really like Mayweather, and I really liked Mayweather at 135. I mean, when he was really taking chances.
Oh
and
yeah,
putting himself out
I
there.
think he's an all-time great lightweight.
Oh, I no doubt about it. But I mean, I don't even count 130 pounds, but I don't think that you can definitely make the case of him being the best at 130. Zuma Nelson was down there too. Whatever. Anyways,
I think I might take a Zuma. I'm not sure.
Well, here's my thing: is I do think he's a great lightweight, and he was taking more chances down there, and he earned his keep, and then he projected a formula and kind of ran with it after a while. But this is my thing, and this is what I brought up on the Ray Robinson show: is when you have 5 divisions within a 14-pound or within a 24-pound limit, right? So we got 130 to 154. In Sugar Ray Robinson's days, if you didn't have that,
You had
you had
135 and 147.
exactly. So if you want, so for 3 weight classes, you had to jump up, you had to jump up more weight. So Sugar Ray Robinson spanned 135 to 175, 40 pounds, but that only constitutes 4 divisions back in the day. So let's imagine Ray Robinson even won, let's imagine he beats Joey Maxim and he's a 4-division champion, right? Okay, and calling himself a 4-division champion would have been an incredible feat, first off, but it's just much different than what you have today, where you can only span 14 pounds, call yourself a quote-unquote world champion in each one of them. Again, it's just different. And maybe Floyd Mayweather, back to the original point, maybe Floyd Mayweather does beat Manny Pacquiao in their prime, but this is how I put it on a previous show. If we would have only had Thomas Hearns versus Sugar Ray Leonard number 2, most people would have been of the opinion that Thomas Hearns beats him if they were in their prime. We honestly don't really know. Pacquiao was much better against Miguel Cotto. That version was much better than what he was against Marquez in the last fight and Floyd Mayweather Jr. It's just much different. I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in what actually happened and project that into a previous period, but I just don't know.
All right, Jeremiah, before we wrap it up, you got anything else?
No, not a whole lot going on. I will say that I don't really, it's just been a lot of gossip that's been going around, and it gets a bit annoying,
It's gossip because there's nothing else going on.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, even if you love Floyd Mayweather, hate Floyd Mayweather, love Wilder, hate Wilder, we still need to be, as fans, we need to be doing a better job of just demanding that the better fights get made, because this sort of gossip nonsense it's just getting old, man. I get tired of where's Fury going to go? Where's Wilder going to go? It's, whatever. But, what was I going to say? Oh, I just wanted to point out that it wasn't a big fight, but it was a pretty fun one. So they had David Avanesian versus Lejaraga over in Europe, and it was just a pretty good fight. And Avanesian ended up scoring an upset knockout win. It was just Avanesian's one of those guys who he's just kind of a fringe level guy. He beat an old Shane Mosley. He's kind of a work rate kind of guy.
He's a solid dude. And I met him when he fought. Who the hell did he fight? He fought Lamont Peterson on the undercard of Broner and Granados. And he's a damn nice kid. So's his dad. And, that's what boxing is. Those are the guys that make boxing. It's not the Floyd Mayweathers or the Tyson Furies or the Deontay Wilders. The people that make boxing what boxing is are people like David Avanesian. Because there's a lot more of them than there are the others. But they are also guys that just go out, they do their job, they'll fight anybody. And, back in the day, a lot of the champions used to do that too. There's very few that do that now.
Yep. Right. And Avanesian's one of those guys who will take on anybody, and he's done a rock solid job so far. I mean, he got kind of beat up against Kavaliauskas, but he comes back and wins the European Championship, which is actually a belt that I don't mind. It's one of those titles that I think is fair. A European Championship, yeah, but he just scored a nice knockout, and I think it's worth just congratulating him for.
All right, Jeremiah, we want to remind people to go anywhere you see our podcast and you can like, comment, or rate. Make sure you do that, especially iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you can do that, do that. If you want to send us any comments or have any ideas about something you want us to talk about on the show, you can send us a message at Grueling Truth or at TGTN Boxing. You can send those out if you want to be on the show to argue something with us. We would love to do that. I love to argue. Jeremiah likes to be quiet and listen to me argue because he doesn't like to argue. But if you want to come on the show and talk about anything, you can come on and agree with us if you want. Just go ahead and hit us up at TGTN Boxing with Jeremiah, or hit me up at Grueling Truth on Twitter. But yeah, we will be back again tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. Sorry we were a little shaky over the last 2 weeks, but I was covering the NCAA tournament, and I'm about basketballed out, so we'll talk a little boxing from now on. Make sure you check out mybookie.ag, especially if you want to bet the fights. You can get up to $1,000 cashback bonus by going on to grillingtruth.net, clicking the banner at the top of the page. Also, go to Facebook and check out the Retired Boxers Foundation. Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos do a great job there, so make sure you check them out also. So we're done for tonight, guys. We'll be back 11 o'clock tomorrow night. So, remember, you can hear us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.